can I just start by, for those of you not familiar with Onward, if you're wondering, well, why do we need another think tank? Onward has burst onto the Conservative scene as, I think I can spare your blushes, Will, the arrowhead of the new thinking for a new generation that is required. I think I may even have just repeated your strapline. But Onward is based, founded in Will's insight that timeless Conservative values, they may be, but the challenges of a new generation require some really fresh thinking and some fresh questions to be asked. And there's always room in the think tank scene for a new think tank. I think it's a sign, Will, of both your and the team's excellence, but also the relevance of what you're doing. That I think it's fair to say Onward has become the Conservative think tank in the last 18 months for fresh thinking and for connecting with the new generation. So thanks for doing it. Having set up the Big Tent Festival, I know that it's one thing to say, I'm going to do this. It's another thing to actually do it and burst onto a very competitive.
Thank you so much, Simon, and thank you so much to Onward for putting this event on. I think it is such an important topic, if not the most important topic we should be talking about at conference, but of course I'm biased, but I'm proud of being biased.
Arguments and policy proposals that are both rooted in Conservative values but also progressive and in the mainstream of politics, and we need that now more than ever. And I'm absolutely delighted that Onward are therefore here and hosting such a full programme at conference, and I'm delighted to play a small part in it.
Really cross with me. But that was just drawing on my own experience. So everybody brings their own experiences to the work that they do and influences the policies we have, to the budget, to the Queen's speech, to all to the manifesto. Which is why it's so important for us to have women's voices in all of those processes. Because women will draw on their own experiences. We may talk more about health or education. We may talk about the challenges that we have in the workplace. But it's through us being part of that conversation that we will then have the right policies.
But the work we do with the tech companies and working in partnership with them does make us safer. Facebook in 2018 alone removed 23 million pieces of data and information from Facebook that were related to Daesh or ISIL. They removed over 9 million pieces of information related to child pornography. Twitter removed something like 350,000 pieces of extremism and over 450,000 accounts related to child pornography. That is us working with tech companies, and they want to. Obviously, it's right for them to want to make sure they are limiting that kind of access and how the internet is used.
Doing the same sort of thing in the UK. We should be looking at the great resource that we've got across the country and the opportunities that there are to develop those areas. So, for those people who are fans of these sort of things, you might have seen the LBC list the 100 most influential Conservatives. And coming in just about at number 100 was Ben Houchen, who's a mayor up in the northeast. And the reason Ben made that list, in my opinion, is because he is really shaking it up in that part of the country. He's doing great things to bring in investment, stimulate the economy, and make sure that it continues to grow in the future. And I think we need to apply what the Chinese are applying across the whole of the world to develop and stimulate our economy here in the UK, and I think there are already some great examples. We need to develop that in the future.
Now I think we have to say, how do we make sure we get the type of home we want in the time frame that we can do and still enjoy all of the things we want to do, going out, having a meal, I don't know, learning, having this experience of an existence. But home ownership is a good and positive thing to aspire to, and we as government has to look at all of these complicated issues in the round and be honest, because Tony was right. What is that honesty there that we can offer you in a time frame we can? And we need to, as a government, use tax incentives to make it easier. So brownfield sites, of which they think there are 1 million homes that we could use there, let's use that. Let's make it cheaper, easier for developers to look at. Let's do preferred development if we can in city centre areas. Let's go up 2 flights. Let's look at things so differently that we could make sure there are affordable homes for the next generation. And dialogue is key to know what somebody wants, when they want it, and know they've got a path to get there. And that's what we should be doing.
I think there was this early view of the web that essentially if everyone was allowed to say whatever they wanted online and tech companies were allowed to sort of follow the philosophies they initially said that they would, then sort of fundamental, liberal, nice, friendly values would win out, and we wouldn't see those sort of hateful opinions expressed. We'd see a web that was somehow sort of a perfect, naive version of humanity. And of course, it turns out that that's not true. It turns out that the web is clearly a place where now I think there is very broad public consent that whether it is anti-vaccination content, whether it is some of the content that people, the young girls in particular, see around eating disorders on Instagram in particular, or whether it is at the other end with the extremism and child sex exploitation, there is clearly public consent that something needs to be done to address a sector that has developed in a profoundly unregulated way.
And we have a core mission, I believe, as Conservatives, to level up, as Neil was talking about, as the Prime Minister has talked about. And that means going into each and every one of those places and understanding what it would take to make it economically successful. And as that kind of hints, frankly, it's also where the politics is. So if you look at the most recent elections this year, our towns were the most politically volatile part of the country. That is where the voter churn is happening, and its ability to win town seats, like Eddie did at the last election, which is going to determine whether or not we are capable of having a majority at the next general election. So frankly, we need politically to get to know and understand each and every place so that we can have an offer for it that is relevant to the people who are living in those communities. And it is worth saying at this point that a project that myself and Will Tanner are doing with Onward, called The Politics of Belonging, is actually asking what people are looking for. And interestingly, they are looking for, from government at any rate, a much greater sense of security, of being looked after. And so it is not simply a case, as the heading of this talk suggests, about setting places free. Actually, moving away, doing less from the government is not always the right thing. It is about making sure there's the capacities and capabilities in those communities for them to thrive.
Now, capitalism, when it's out of control, can lead to, or inadequately understood or controlled, can lead to enormous inequality. We've seen that in some crony capitalist countries. Go to, Pakistan, for example, khaki capitalism. Go to Bolivia, narco-capitalism. Go to, Russia, oligarch capitalism. There are different varieties there. What we need to do is to recognise those varieties and be more intelligent about how we think about them. In the UK, we have actually inequality's gone down since the crash. Gini coefficient has got less because, broadly speaking, people are better on benefits than they were before. But there is a concern about in-country inequality. Global inequality has gone down significantly as a result of the open markets the last few decades, and the rise of China. That's been a fantastic thing. Very quickly, you can make the same point about the components of capitalism. So one shouldn't just think of it as being about companies, one should think of it as being a heterogeneous group of economic institutions, partnerships, sole proprietorships, co-ops, mutuals, employee-owned organizations. All of those have their part to play in capitalism, and we don't want to analogize them all to each other. That's another mistake. They can go wrong. There can be crony capitalism. I hope we'll discuss that. But when they go well, it's the greatest force of wealth creation and economic advantage ever created.
As you're trying to build your career, you're not going to build up a pension. Now that creates a public policy problem going forward. So we've got to think about pensions in that regard. Yes, tax matters, but I'm sorry, and I had this argument with the Treasury at the time on this thing. You, as a self-employed person, you don't get sick pay, you don't get pension contribution, you don't get various benefits. I think it's wrong to now say those people should pay the same sort of tax as people who are employed. I'm not saying anybody's quite suggesting that, and this is, we've got a new team at the Treasury, so, I'm sure they're looking at all this. But my point is, we need to actively embrace self-employment, not see it as a problem to be managed.
And I was very pleased when it was Neil O'Brien, wasn't it, set up Onward. Neil is another bright young thing from the 17 intake, and also used to work at Number 10, and I think is an important voice, and I think he's originally from further north than where he represents. But it's making sure that in our kind of conversations that we have, that we don't just have things that are London-centric, we don't have just things in industries that we have used to working in. I worked for 12 years for a company called Mars Incorporated. It makes Mars bars. It makes dog food. Not in the same factory, you'll be pleased to know. And then I worked for a short time for the BBC, which had a very London-centric view on life, which is still largely evident. But so it's important that we have that sort of thinking, and I believe Onward is an important part of that conversation that we need to continue to do.